Hey guys, and welcome back to Mr. and Mrs. Magic Under the Moon. Today I'm going to be talking about something that a lot of people don't really talk about much, blood magic. I'm going to be telling you what it is, what it isn't, and how to use it properly. A few of you said you want a deeper dive into blood magic. You ask, I deliver. I'm not just going to give you one video. I'm going to give you the whole series on it. I'm going to start by learning blood magic isn't a requirement for beginners. In fact, it's a specialization that assumes emotional stability and the ability to live with consequences without spiraling. If that's not where you are right now, that's not a failure. It just means you may not be ready yet. This isn't gatekeeping, it's just reality. Blood magic assumes you already know how to enter altered states, hold intention without drift, close out workings cleanly, and live with consequences without blaming spirits, gods, or other people. If you don't have those skills yet, blood isn't going to give them to you. For this series, we're going to talk about when blood is appropriate, when it's reckless, why most people use it wrong, and how to think about blood as a strategic tool, not a personality trait. This series isn't about encouraging blood magic, it's about removing the mystery so people stop hurting themselves out of ignorance. We're going to talk about when blood is appropriate, when it's reckless, why alternatives often work better, and how to think like a sorcerer instead of a thrill seeker. Before we begin, I need to be very clear about something. This video discusses blood magic in an educational and philosophical context only. We are not providing instructions, demonstrations, or encouragement for self harm or unsafe practices of any kind. Blood magic isn't required for spiritual growth, manifestation, or effective magic. If you are experiencing urges to harm yourself, or if you're in a vulnerable emotional state, this content is not meant for you, and we strongly encourage you to seek support from a qualified professional or a trusted person in your life. Any discussion of blood in this series is about symbolism, ethics, responsibility, and historical or theoretical frameworks, not about physical acts. We believe magic should support life, sovereignty, and long term well being, not replace mental health care or personal safety. Viewer discretion is advised, and this content is intended for adult audiences. With that said, let's talk about what blood magic actually is and what it isn't. What we're not going to do. Not how to cutting tutorials. No romanticizing self harm. No edgy witch nonsense. The edgy witch. Blood magic is adult magic, and adults take responsibility. Here's another myth we need to kill. Blood magic is not required for serious work. Advanced magic does not require blood. If blood is the only way you can make something work, the issue isn't the method, it's your foundation. Well, yeah, without a strong foundation, you can't exactly succeed and go forth and do stuff. Blood is a specialization, not a graduation method. Many experienced sorcerers go for years without using it at all. When people hear blood magic, they usually imagine something extreme: knives, packs, demons, or people doing reckless things for attention. It's one of those topics where people either sensationalize it or shut down completely. Some people treat it like the ultimate power move, others act like even talking about it is dangerous. But honestly, both reactions miss the point. Blood magic isn't about shock value, it isn't inherently dark, evil, or advanced. It's about commitment, identity, and irreversibility. And if you don't understand these things, you may not be ready to work with it yet. Lastly, and arguably most importantly, and specificity is what makes it risky. People romanticize blood as sacred, but let's be clear about why. Biologically, blood carries oxygen, nutrients, hormones, immune memory, and DNA. Energetically, that translates to life history. Blood doesn't just say, I want this. It says, this comes from everything I've ever been. That's powerful, but it's also heavy. This video is not invitation. It is an explanation. If you're here to understand what blood actually does in magic, then you're in the right place. One of the biggest myths is that blood makes spells stronger automatically. Blood doesn't automatically make spells stronger. Blood's not gasoline. It doesn't boost power. If any of that were true, people bleeding every day would be manifesting miracles nonstop. See, blood doesn't amplify sloppy intent. Thank goodness. It doesn't fix bad focus. It doesn't make up for the fear or for the doubt. What blood does do is it does anchor the intention to you. It binds the working to you, your body, your timeline, your consequences. Think of most spell work like broadcasting a signal. Blood magic is handwriting that signal directly into your nervous system. That's not more power, that's more commitment. That's why blood sorcery traditions emphasize control over quantity. More blood doesn't mean more power. More blood means more entanglement. You're adding more threads to your binding of the spell to yourself. You're tying the working more tightly so there's more of you in the working. Blood functions as a signature, not fuel. It says, this is mine, this comes from me. I am accountable for what happens next. In that sense, blood works more like a legal name signed at the bottom of a contract. Once it's there, you can't pretend you didn't mean it. Here's where people really underestimate what blood does. Blood doesn't just carry identity, it carries current, emotional chemistry. Whatever state you're in when blood is involved doesn't stay background noise, it becomes structural. So if you're anxious, obsessive, angry, desperate, heartbroken, that emotional strength gets built into the working. It's not minor, it becomes part of the architecture. And the more blood involved, the more that state sticks. That's why emotions take longer to fade, reactions loop back harder, and detachment can become difficult. This is where people start saying things like, I can't stop thinking about the spell, or it won't resolve cleanly, or I feel drained, but I don't know why. That's not the spell malfunctioning, that's emotional entanglement doing exactly what it does. But it also ties a working to your future self, not just the moment you cast it. You're not just saying, I want this now. You're saying, I am willing to live inside this outcome. That means more blood increases duration, momentum, and resistance to reversal, which means the working doesn't automatically dissolve just because you moved on. This is why blood workings often outlive the desire that created them. I mean, think about it. People change, you change, but the spell doesn't get that memo. There's one more layer. people confuse for success. Blood creates a tighter feedback loop between thought, emotion, and manifestation. So, yes, things may respond faster, but they also react faster to doubt, fear, fixation, second guessing. So people think, OMG, it's working, when in reality, it's echoing. More blood doesn't create clarity, it creates louder echoes. Here's the part that surprises people. If blood were about power, experienced sorcerers would use a lot of it. They don't. They use the minimum signature, the cleanest link, the least entangling method, because they understand something beginners don't yet. And that's control is more valuable than intensity. Think of it like this: blood isn't money you spend, it's your signature on a contract. Signing your name once isn't enough. Signing it 50 times doesn't make the contract better. It just makes it harder to dispute later. So, fun fact, most failed blood magic spell work doesn't fail because the magic wasn't intense or powerful enough. It fails because the magician changed their mind, or maybe they panicked mid working. Maybe they didn't actually want the outcome. And this doesn't have to be in a way that's super obvious. A sudden wave of doubt, wondering if this is the right thing to do, that's already sending the message that this isn't really what you want. But once blood is introduced, the working isn't just happening around you, it's happening through you. That means your habits, your emotions, your contradictions, and your unresolved issues all become part of the spell. And that's why blood magic punishes dishonesty faster than almost any other method. So honestly, try to avoid doing workings as a knee-jerk reaction. You need to be honest about what you truly want or need. This really does hold truth for just about any type of working, but especially when it comes to blood magic. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Blood magic removes plausible deniability. See, in most forms of spell work, believe it or not, there's some kind of wiggle room. You can always tell yourself things like, I wasn't really sure what I wanted, or the timing must have been off, or the universe misunderstood me. That ambiguity isn't a flaw, but it does tend to happen with beginner or sometimes even mid level magic. But things like that help you learn through trial and error and basically gracefully disengage. As in chaos magic, especially, this ambiguity might even be intentional. Take sigils, for example. You fire the sigil and then you forget it. You don't track it, you don't cling to it. Plausible deniability lets the psyche stay flexible. Blood magic, though, collapses that wiggle room. When blood is involved, you're no longer saying something like, I'm experimenting. You're saying, I authorize this. Once your biological identity is attached, the working has a clear author. Now it's much harder to say, I didn't really mean it. Energetically, those statements don't work anymore because your actions, you using your blood, you said this was deliberate. Blood removes your ability to blame the system. In non blood workings, if the working doesn't pan out, people tend to place blame externally. They'll say something like, oh, Mercury must be in retrograde. But because you basically signed on the dotted line with your blood, the result loops back to you. So if the outcome is messy, distorted, or painful, the question becomes, what part of me subconsciously led the results that way? That's psychologically comforting, and that's why blood magic forces maturity. So really hear me out. when I tell you this. When someone's desperate, grieving, obsessed, panicking, plausible deniability is protective. But when that's removed through blood magic, the emotional state you were in, that gets frozen into the working. Then, when things don't work out, you can't say, that wasn't really me. Because magically speaking, it was you. At least enough to sign it. Whatever unfolds, you own it. That's how people end up bound to outcomes they no longer want. Now, when you have someone who's had more experience with blood magic, it's not unusual to find that he or she both respects and avoids blood magic because it's more important than ever to be in the right headspace. Blood magic can create excellent clarity and cut through self deception, but it can also expose unconscious contradictions and amplify unexamined motives. It can reveal whether you were honest, and sometimes we may not be ready for that. If you're unsure, unstable, impulsive, or acting out of desperation, blood magic will lock those states into the working, and now you're looking at self sabotage. Now, I don't say that to scare you. I say it so you understand what blood magic is actually asking. When blood removes plausible deniability, it's forcing a question you can't dodge. Am I stable enough to stand behind this? So consider this: if you feel the urge to rush a blood working, that urge may be telling you something. Blood magic should feel deliberate, not urgent. Calm doesn't mean weak. It means you're actually in control. If you can't wait, don't bleed. If you're just starting out, this isn't a judgment, it's guidance. Learn to do magic that you can stop thinking about and walk away from. If you can't do that yet, blood won't help you learn it. Blood is for when you already trust yourself, not when you're trying to force trust into existence. So if you take one thing from this section, let it be this. If your emotional state feels chaotic, the answer isn't more intensity. The answer is not yet. And not yet is a form of wisdom, not weakness. Here's something people don't like hearing. Blood magic isn't permanent, but it is sticky. It creates momentum that's harder to dissolve, redirect, or walk away from. If a candle spell is chalk on a sidewalk, blood magic is ink on skin. You can still change it, but it takes more effort and more honesty. That's why experienced practitioners use blood magic sparingly, not frequently. There's a reason blood works across multiple cultures, systems, and time periods. Biologically, blood carries DNA, hormones, immune memory, stress markers, emotional chemistry. Energetically, that translates into history. When you use blood, you're not offering a moment, you're offering context. That's powerful. But it also means unresolved trauma, obsession, or fear can leak into the working. Blood doesn't purify intent, it exposes it. One of the most dangerous reasons people reach for blood magic is desperation. Breakups, financial collapses, obsession with a person's outcome. Blood magic performed from desperation doesn't resolve the desperation, it enshrines it. You're not saying, I want this. You're saying, I can't live without this. And magic responds literally. That's how people trap themselves in a long term energetic feedback loops. Let's talk about consent. Not in a social sense, but a magical one. When you use blood, you're consenting to consequences. you may not fully understand yet. You're saying, I accept responsibility for how this unfolds. That includes saying things like unintended manifestations, delayed results, internal changes, losses that make space for gains. If you're the kind of practitioner who externalizes blame to spirits, demons, gods, or fate, blood magic will break you because it keeps receipts. Blood magic assumes you already have emotional regulation, ritual discipline, strong banishing or closure skills, the ability to sit down with uncomfortable outcomes without spiraling. If you don't have those, blood doesn't teach them. It exposes their absence. That's why books like Blood Sorcery emphasize judgment and restraint over bravado. Okay, so I want to go through a simple working you can try. What I'm about to share is not a how-to on bloodletting. This is a conceptual ritual structure that demonstrates how blood functions in sorcery as identity, consent, and binding without requiring anyone to use blood at all. If you ever work with blood in the future, this is the mental and energetic framework you should already understand first. This working is about sovereignty, clearly defining what is yours, what is not, and what you are no longer available for. So, the first thing you want to do is to declare your purpose. Sit or stand comfortably, no tools required. Out loud or internally, say something like, this working is for clarity, sovereignty, and self alignment. Nothing harmful is required or permitted here. This establishes the first rule of blood sorcery. Nothing happens without consent, including from yourself. Next, you'll want to have an identity statement. This is a core blood magic concept. Blood magic always begins with identity. Say, I am the authority over my body, my energy, and my choices. What I claim here is claimed by me alone. This statement is more important than any substance used later. If you can't say this and mean it, blood magic is not appropriate. Okay, so next, in traditional blood magic, this is where a personal biological marker might be introduced. But for this teaching example, you can instead use any of the following substances. Your full legal name written once, a thumbprint with ink, a breath you blow on a written statement, a spoken phrase repeated 3 times with focus. What matters isn't the medium, it's the irreversibility of intent. Ask yourself this. If this worked permanently, would I be okay with that? If the answer is no, then stop. If the answer is yes, then keep going and say, this working binds only what I consciously choose. It does not feed obsession, fear, or desperation. This step shows you what blood magic amplifies. Whatever you don't name, silence isn't neutrality in sorcery. It's permission. Next, you're gonna want to learn how to release the spell. Say something like, I release this working to unfold without fixation. I do not chase it, monitor it, or bleed into it emotionally. Blood magic fails most often after the ritual when the magician won't let go. For the last step, you'll close with saying, the working is complete, I remain whole. The last sentence matters. Blood sorcery is never about depletion. It's about deliberately investing in what you're doing, but with boundaries. If you noticed, nothing here requires blood. That's intentional. If you can't make this framework without blood, adding blood won't fix it. Blood's not going to replace clarity, but it does replace excuses. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned that to practice blood magic, you should know how to enter altered states of consciousness, hold intention without drift, and close out workings cleanly. If you don't have those skills, but you want to know how to get there, you may want to check out some of our other videos. Check out the link at the end to our video, Achieving Gnosis, which takes you through different ways to enter altered states. Later, we'll also put out a video outside of this series that can show you ways to hold your intent, as well as ways to achieve a clean closure to your working where your psyche and energy get the message that the process is done. Remember, blood magic isn't dark magic. It's honest magic. And honesty isn't always comfortable. Before you ever consider using blood, ask yourself, am I willing to live with the outcome? Even if it doesn't look how I imagined? If the answer is no, then wait. Next episode, we're going to talk about why blood works at all and why most of the time you actually don't need it.